Hey everyone, I am Robin the Copy Bitch. This is Stewie, my sidekick sloth. And today we are going to talk about 20 essential copywriting skills. We got a lot to get to, so let's get to it, shall we? Okay, so the first skill is going to seem pretty basic, but it is important. You have to know how to write well. And that might seem so simple, and it might seem like, hey, if someone wants to be a writer, of course they know how to write. Well, not necessarily, and I'm living proof of that. I've wanted to be a writer since I was in fourth grade, actually. Yeah, fourth grade. Fourth grade sounds about right. And here's the thing, you don't just wake up one day and say, I'm going to be a writer. You have to study it. You have to make sure you understand how to use a semicolon correctly and understand the different rules of grammar and understand when you can break them, all those sort of things. Like, it's not something you just wake up one day and say, hey, I'm going to be a writer. You have to actually study it. Is it a learnable skill? Absolutely. But just because you want to be a copywriter doesn't necessarily mean you are a copywriter yet, or even a good writer yet. So just make sure you have an honest conversation with yourself. And if you're not so sure of things, go learn, go read the books, go take a course, go online and take a course. But make sure that you know how to write well and that you're not kidding yourself. So make sure that there's someone with authority in writing who says, yeah, you know what you're doing. You're a good writer. You're a solid writer. So that's kind of like the top skill. Make sure you know how to write well, and then the rest can and will follow. And we'll get into the other skills that you need now. Okay, skill number 2, and this goes hand in hand with the first skill. So knowing how to write, knowing the proper rules of grammar and punctuation and spelling, all of that's important. And you need that. That's the very base, your foundation. But you also need to understand the tenets of copywriting and inbound marketing and content marketing. So you have the base level of knowing how to write. Now you have to know how to write copy, and they're not necessarily the same thing. Like, you can break the rules of grammar when you're writing copy, and your 8th grade English teacher might not have been okay with that. So it is a little bit of a different animal, but again, it's very learnable, and there are plenty of resources out there that can teach you how to do content marketing and the tenets of inbound marketing. I've talked about this endlessly in so many of my videos, but I realize this might be the first video of mine that you're seeing. So I will include links. The place I would recommend checking out is HubSpot Academy. That's HubSpot Academy. And the reason why I always talk about HubSpot is because it's free. These are free certifications that you can take online when it's convenient to you, and you can learn about inbound marketing, you can learn about SEO copywriting, you can learn about email marketing. It's just a great place to get the lay of the land if you are new to copywriting land. So make sure, in addition to knowing how to write well, you understand copywriting. That's an essential copywriting skill. Makes sense, right? Okay, skill number 3. This is something that I think it just plagues society in general. We're so used to just sending a text on a fly, or not having proper grammar or punctuation. Like, you can't do that with clients. You have to proofread your work. And again, that might sound like a very basic suggestion, but I see so much copy that's sent to clients that just hasn't been proofread. It's clear it hasn't been proofread. Typos do happen. I make typos, I make mistakes. I'm not saying I'm, without fault. I definitely make mistakes, but I triple proofread things. I proofread things in Word, and then I upload the document to Google Docs, and then it goes through a very careful edit with Grammarly, and then I reread and proofread again. So there's a lot of proofreading that goes on. It does add in time, but by and large, I very rarely have clients come back needing a revision. So that's a good thing. There are other reasons aside from just clean copy that happens. But clean copy is a big part of it. It's not sloppy. There aren't mistakes. I've thought through everything. So make sure you proofread. If you don't know how to proofread, that's something you can learn. Get online, learn what proofreading is, learn how to get better at proofreading, find the tools that help you become a better proofreader, whether it's something like Grammarly, I'll link to that below, I'll be doing a video on that, or some other tool. There are so many tools and apps that can help you, but make sure you proofread your work before sending it to the client, okay? Okay, another essential copywriting skill, and I think this is getting to be more and more important, especially in the era of chat GPT. I always want to say GBT. It's GPT. Anyway, The essential copywriting skill is creativity and storytelling. Now, creativity, some would argue, is just an innate talent, and that might be true. I don't know. Can you learn to be creative? I like to think that you probably could learn to be more creative. Maybe you never thought you were creative, but I think everyone has that within them. It's just figuring out how to tap into that. And I don't have the answer about that. I'm sure there's plenty written. You can look on that. But creativity is what's going to set you apart from many of the other copywriters out there and plenty of the AI writers that are out there. Because the thing I'm seeing with AI writing is decent, like it's grammatically correct and it's punctuated correctly. So right there, it's a few steps up from some copywriters out there. But it sounds just kind of generic and artificial, at least right now. It's friendly, it's conversational, but it's missing that spark. And that's where I think a human comes into play. Like, we can bring the spark, we can bring the spiciness to the writing. So creativity is important. You want to have that. And then being able to tell a good story, a good yarn, that's going to come in handy, because good copy, it's about storytelling, especially on like about pages and in blog posts and in longer form content. So that's a skill that you might want to read more about. If that's something you're like, what is she talking about? Work on creativity, work on those muscles, and work on your storytelling muscles, because those skills will come in handy as a freelance copywriter. Okay, essential skill number 5, you ask good questions. And if you're not someone who asks good questions, we'll get good at that. Like, always be thinking. And I think sometimes we live in a society, at least in the US, where we don't want to be rude and we don't want to pry and, we just want to be polite. Well, take a step back and ask questions. Ask the probing questions. Ask the questions that maybe you're afraid to ask. A favorite question of mine that I like to ask people when I'm doing interviews is like, pretend that I'm 10 years old and how would you explain this to me? This is not, I didn't make this up. Like, I've heard this elsewhere. Other people use this. This is a tip that's used, but it's a great tip because it makes the person you're talking to think about saying it in a different way. It really helps you understand what you're talking about, and then it can often lead to a natural follow-up question. But you want to get good at asking questions. You want to get good at interviewing, and I just ask good questions. Getting used to that just with talking with friends and family members. Ask questions. People like to talk about themselves when you're talking to clients about their products or services. They're going to want to talk about it, but you have to kind of guide them. So get good at asking questions, and not just to clients, but just in critical thinking. I think the critical thinking is something we need to, that's a skill and it's a muscle, and you have to practice. Otherwise we can lose it. So always ask questions when you're reading things and when you're learning about things, or someone's teaching you something, or you're attending a webinar. Ask questions. So just get in the habit of doing it and asking lots of questions. It'll serve you well as a freelance copywriter, or a copywriter who works for someone too. I kind of gave my number 6 and my number 5, but you want to make sure you have mad interviewing skills. Interviewing skills are critical, and that goes hand in hand with asking good questions. But sometimes you're not necessarily interviewing someone when you're asking the question. You're just asking questions of the client, maybe about the project, and making sure you're thinking of all the different facets and all the different things that they might need. But when you're interviewing a client, a subject matter expert for a blog post or a white paper or whatever it is, you need good interviewing skills. And if you come from journalism land, great, you're going to have a leg up on many copywriters. But again, this is a skill you can learn. And guess what? I have a video on interviewing skills that I will link to below. So if you want to learn more about that, you can look at that video, and that'll tell you stuff, right? Tell you stuff. That's so good. Number 7, another essential skill is you're not afraid to teach yourself something that you don't know. Or, if you know you're weak in an area, or if you're sitting there going, search engine optimization, I'm not really sure what that means. Like, okay, go teach yourself about it. Teach yourself everything about it. You need to do that as a copywriter. No one's going to like knock on your door and be like, Robin, you need to learn about this. You need to learn about this. Like, if you are serious about being a freelance copywriter in this very competitive age, you need to make sure that you're not afraid to go out there and learn about something. And then a great example in my life right now is ChatGPT. I'm going to get this acronym right at some point. I'm just trying to learn as much as I can about it because it's affecting my world. Not in a bad way. I'm not panicking. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. But it's something that's out there and I need to know about it. I have clients asking about it. So I'm just educating myself. I'm just being a sponge and reading everything I can read on it. I'm practicing with it or using the tool. Just, you have to do that. You have to do that. So don't be afraid of teaching yourself something that you don't know. Because there's going to be a lot of stuff you don't know when you're starting out, and that's okay. Again, there's so much information out there. Make sure you're using a reputable source to teach yourself, but teach yourself, okay? All right, number 8, you read a lot. Writers are readers. Serious writers are readers. And I get it. Like, writing can be very romantic sounding and like, oh, I'm a writer. Well, okay, great. But if you want to be a serious writer, you have to be a serious reader. And you need to read for pleasure, and you also need to read in the area that you're writing in and read about copywriting. If you're writing about a particular niche, you're probably going to want to read about that. Like if you are someone who writes about a particular subject, maybe it's in medicine of some sort. Maybe you write about urology and like that's your niche. You are like this great medical writer about urology topics. Well, you're going to probably read deeply about urology topics. And you're probably going to have Google alerts set up on different, the latest studies in prostate cancer and things like that. So you're going to want to read specifically in what you write in. You're going to want to read about copywriting. You're going to want to just read for pleasure. It's going to make you a better writer. It's funny how that happens, and there are books out there. I'll see if I can remember to link to it in the description that helps you read as a writer too. I think there's actually a book titled that I might own. So I'll see if I can find that, but that's a good skill set. It all works together to help make you a better writer and a better thinker, which is a good thing too, right? Okay, you know how to research, and not just quickly, because anyone can do that. Anyone with Google can do that, but you know how to research accurately. That's the thing that catches people. It's like anyone can go to Google and plug something in, and like the first thing that comes up seems to have the answer. Well, we are thinkers, and we know that's not necessarily true. So you have to make sure you are a good researcher, and you know how to identify a good primary source, a good secondary source, a difference between the two, when you need one over the other. You need to know what's considered a reputable source. You need to put your own biases aside, and that can be hard. So this is a whole different skill set, but as you do more work and you're writing blog posts and white papers and things like that, you're going to need good research skills. You're going to need to be able to do it quickly, but also accurately. So again, this is an essential copywriting skill. If you're struggling with this, you can Google more to see if you can find out how to become a better researcher, but it is an essential skill set that you will need as a writer. Okay, number 10, you know what you don't know. And that that sounds weird because sometimes you don't know what you don't know. That's very true. And that's why you have to be reading and paying attention and listening. And you might realize, gee, I didn't know that. I got to go read about that. But sometimes you do know what you don't know. Like you might realize, hey, I don't know what this chat GPT thing is. And I maybe I should know more about that. So then you go read about it. But it's good to just and you know what? It's okay to not know everything. Stewie thinks he knows everything. He doesn't. And no one does. And that's okay. Like have that humility to be able to say, you know what? I don't know the answer to that. And be okay saying that to a client, being like, I don't know the answer to that, but let me find out and I'll get back to you. And then do it. Like go research it. They'll probably forget even asking, but go research it, find out, make sure you understand, then you can tell them. It's okay to say that. And it's good to know what you don't know because then you know where the gaps are and then you can try to fill them. And like I said, sometimes you're not going to know what you don't know, but it'll become clear because something will happen making you go like, oh, I should have known that. And I didn't. So again, that's an essential just human skill. We should all know you don't know everything. Okay. You just don't. Number 11, you're a good listener. And what do I mean by a good listener? I mean someone who listens actively. If you don't know what I mean by active listening, Google that, read up on that because that's important. Like you have passive listening where you're just, you're kind of like sitting back, maybe you're scrolling on your phone. Like we've all been there. We've all done that. You can't do that in your work as a copywriter when you're working with clients or you're interviewing someone. You need to be an active listener where you're making eye contact. You're reflecting what you're hearing from the person. You're making the verbal cues. You're showing your interest. You're sitting up straight. You don't have your phone or your inbox open. You're paying attention. Again, I think sometimes we all, and I fall into this trap too, where we are multitasking. We're only half listening. So it's an essential copywriting skill because if the better you listen, the more you're going to capture and know, you're going to hear a little nugget that you can put into the writing to really make it sparkle, to make that thing happen that I was talking about that chat GPT can't do. So make sure that you work on your listening skills if that is a weakness. And if you are a good listener, great. You're like ahead of the game. Number 12, okay, here we go. You communicate well in writing and verbally. Now you might think, isn't this kind of redundant? Like, I'm already writing well, so obviously I communicate well. Well, I'm talking beyond the actual content that you deliver to the client. So maybe you write a kick-ass white paper. And that's great that you've written that well, but you still need to communicate well to the client when you're talking to the client or talking to the subject matter expert. You still need to communicate well in email. You need to communicate well in any sort of correspondence that you have with your client, whether it's verbally or in writing. And that can be hard. Like I will admit this, I send long emails. I send long emails for a reason, and I don't do it just to be annoying. I usually have a purpose, and I like having a paper trail. But I do like to be, like, I'm trying to be very clear in my emails and highlight certain things and bullet points, so at least it's skimmable. And I warn someone, like, this is kind of long, but I find that it's harder to communicate what I'm saying in an email that someone can read. If I try to do it verbally, people are going to miss stuff. So even if they get annoyed seeing the long email, they can go back to it and they can read it when they have more time. That's the way I do things. I'm sure there are plenty of people who'd be like, you know what, you don't have to send those long emails, Robin. But you'll figure out what works for you. I do find that by and large it works in my world and with the clients I work with. But you do have to be a good communicator, and you have to be a good communicator verbally. And that can be hard because a lot of writers are introverted and we don't necessarily want to talk on the phone, or, I get that, and I've had to get over that, and I still have moments when I have to do a little pep rally to get on a phone call right before I'm doing an interview. It's normal, but it's a skill that you can improve too if you struggle with that. So just keep in mind that you have to be a good communicator in general. 13, you meet deadlines. Full stop. Just you meet deadlines. It's not a suggestion. I can't even there's always going to be an extenuating circumstance. I don't think in 20 plus years I've ever missed a deadline. Have I? I certainly haven't missed one. There might have been a circumstance where maybe I was sick or something came up, and I would email the client and be like, listen, I'm going to get this to you tomorrow, and here's why. Again, handful of times maybe. In 20 plus years, you can't miss deadlines. It's just that I don't even know what else to say about that. So I bring it up because I hear horror stories about writers just disappearing or ghosting, or they just don't meet the deadlines. Like, they might be the world's greatest writers, but if they just aren't doing it, like, why? Copywriters are a dime a dozen. Like, the client will find someone else who's just as good as you. So get over yourself, make the deadline, right? Right. Okay, number 14. You can play well with others, meaning you can collaborate, you can be on a team, but you can also fly well on your own. That's hard, to walk, but it's a balancing act, to be able to work on a team, but then to also be able to self-regulate and self-manage on your own. That's a skill you need to learn if you struggle with one or the other or both. I tend to be introverted. I like working on my own, but sometimes, you have to have teamwork and you have to get on those Zoom calls with a bunch of people or brainstorm. It's hard. It's hard for me because that's not my skill, but I do it because it's part of my job and I'm aware of what I need to work on it. So just be aware that you have to, as a copywriter, if you're freelancing especially, you have to do both. You're going to have to be part of teams occasionally. And there are plenty of times where you're going to be, just operating on your own and needing to budget your time and making sure you're making your deadlines and all that. So just, be aware. That's a skill you need to develop. Number 15, speaking of budgeting your time, you have to be good at budgeting your time. This is something that probably just about every freelancer struggles with in the beginning. If you're coming from a world where you've worked for someone and suddenly you're thrust into freelancing, you're going to have to learn it. I don't think that's a skill anyone's born with. You're just born knowing how to budget your time. You're going to have to figure that out. And how it works for you is going to be different than how it works for me because your circumstances are going to be different. You might have kids, you might have just so many different things. Like, we all have different things. Some people have kids, some people have elderly parents, some people have both, some people have tons of pets. Some people have illnesses that there are so many things that can affect how you work and when you get your work done. So learning how to budget your time is something, you just need to figure out what works for you. And there are courses and coaches and people who can help with that if you need help with that. So just keep that in mind. All right, number 16, you're empathetic. And empathy is, okay. First of all, empathy versus sympathy. So Empathy is when you can put yourself in someone else's shoes. Like you can really see things from their perspective. You can listen to what they're saying without passing judgment. You're really trying to identify with what they're going through and without passing judgment, and really kind of trying to see things from their perspective. And that's important. You need it when you're dealing with other people, when you're talking to your clients. You need it when you're dealing with your client's audience. So you're working for your client, they're selling a product or a service to, a prospective buyer, and you really need to know who that prospective buyer is and try to see things from their point of view so that you can write copy that's going to resonate with them. Empathy is just important as being a human being. Again, it's a great human skill to develop. It's something that we just need it as a society, of course, just be more empathetic. If you're not sure what that means or how to have empathy in marketing, I will link to some stuff below, but you might want to read more about that because it's an important topic in general, but empathetic marketing is an actual thing too. So you might want to read more about it, and it's a good skill to develop. It's only going to serve you well. Okay, number 17, you don't panic when things become slow, when a client gives you negative feedback, or a client goes away, or a new piece of technology like ChatGPT, there it is again, comes on the scene. You don't panic. You can't panic. I'm not saying it's going to always be a feast or famine sort of situation. I think that's usually the stereotype people think of with writers. It doesn't have to be that way. But there are going to be times when things might be a little slow, or there might be a time when it seems like everything's happening at once. Like maybe you lose a couple clients at once, or something happens in your life where it's just, it's harder. Try not to panic. And I know that's easier said than done, but you're going to have hard times. That's just life, right? And there will happen in your business life too. And just, don't panic. Think about self-care and what you need to do to take care of yourself, but try not to panic. I do believe, even with ChatGPT and stuff, that there is so much work for good freelance copywriters right now. Now that's where I'm writing this, I'm recording this in 2023. So if you're watching this after 2023, who knows? But I really do. I think there's going to be a need for good copywriters for a while. I don't think we're at that point yet where we're going away. So there is work out there for people who can do all the things I'm talking about, who possess all these skills that I'm talking about. So again, just don't panic. Okay, number 18, know how to set boundaries. Know how to set boundaries with your clients. Know how to set boundaries with the people in your life. Like if you live in a house with other people and they just don't get the fact that you're working, you need to know how to set boundaries with them, whether it's kids or a partner or animals, people knocking on the door, neighbors, friends. You have to set boundaries with clients. In this world where it's so easy to become friends on Facebook or Twitter or stuff, you blur the line between client and friend, and you got to be careful and clients can become friends, but you still need to be careful because you still have that business relationship. You need to figure that out, but you need to set boundaries. You need to set boundaries with family and friends. You need to set boundaries with yourself. You can't be working all the time. You have to eventually close the door on your work life and go live your personal life. We all need that balance. So I'm not gonna, belabor that point because we all hear it, but you need to know how to set those boundaries. So again, if that's something you struggle with as a person, just know it and figure out how you're going to mitigate that because it's important. We're nearing the end, Stewie. Okay, number 19. Don't be afraid to talk about money, all right? I know money and finances, especially in this society, no one wants to talk about it, polite society. Don't be afraid. This is a business. So, a client is late paying me by one day, I'm sending an email because this is a business and I've done work and I'm polite. I'm not mean about it. Usually it's an oversight. Actually, it's always an oversight. It's never been because someone's trying to stiff me. But this is a business, Don't be afraid to talk about money. Don't be afraid to charge what you're worth. Don't be afraid to raise your rates if it's, if it makes sense and this is where you're at and you raised your rates. And you know what? When you make that decision to do something like that, raising your rates, know that you might lose a client or two and be okay with that before you actually make that decision to go down that road. Just know that might happen. Just don't be afraid to talk about money. Don't be afraid to think about money. If you don't understand finances or taxes or things like that, I'm not saying you have to become an accountant, but know the lingo. That's, again, a learnable skill. But this is a business, and as a business owner, you need to understand this stuff. So make sure you do. Okay, and number 20, this goes in line with number 19. You want to make sure you mind your copywriting house. And what I mean by that is you keep good books. You send the invoices at the end of the month or whenever your billing cycle is. You pay your taxes. I'm in the US, so you're going to be paying quarterly taxes. Do so, because you're going to get in trouble at the end of the year and have to pay a big chunk of money on top of, the Q1 for the next year at once, and that can be really painful. If minding your copywriting house might involve outsourcing to people, you might need an accountant, or you might need a financial planner. You might need both. Maybe you need a bookkeeper. You need to figure those things out, but you need to do these things. You're running a business. You need to mind the details of your business, not just for your clients, but for the day-to-day stuff that you're doing. So I'm calling it a copywriting essential, because it is. It's a copywriting skill. It's an essential. In order to do your job well, you need to not be worrying about, whether you're going to lose internet service because you forgot to pay the bill or something like that. So that's important. Make sure you do that. All right, so I think we covered our 20 copywriting skills, essential copywriting skills, all sorts of stuff in there. I know I threw a lot of information at you, but hopefully you found some of this helpful. I've been doing this copywriting thing for over 20 years, so I feel confident that all the 20 skills I just gave you are just critical to running a sound copywriting business that's going to be successful. But I'm sure I probably missed some too, and that's okay. Feel free to share your ideas in the comments, or if you have questions, let me know, because maybe I'll make a future video about it. Again, I'm Robin the Copy Bitch. This is Stewie, my sidekick sloth. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you do, just move along, and we will see you next time. Bye!